Hello and welcome to another episode of the Career Reset podcast. So you are actually, without even knowing, you're part of my podcast batch recording. So I just finished recording the episode you heard last week, and I'm jumping in to record the next episode. Because I will be away for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to visit my family. So I'm doing a little bit of a project, a little bit of an experiment if I am actually able to record more of these episodes in one go. If you're watching on YouTube, I changed my outfit to make it look like it's a different day, but that kind of missed the point since I am now exposing the truth that it's literally been 2 minutes since recording the last episode. And I sound positive, but today's topic is not one that is very light, but it is a topic that needs to be talked about. And that is recovering from a layoff. So here in Finland, layoffs have become extremely common. Big companies, small companies, all kinds of industries are doing layoffs. Companies are leaving Finland. Companies are reducing their workforce for mainly economical reasons, but also reasons of like bigger shifts in the market, AI, all that kind of stuff. And it's just inevitable. Either you have been affected yourself, or you definitely know someone in your friend circle or in your family who has been affected either through a partial layoff or being fully laid off, or maybe you have had a temporary contract and the contract was not extended. And I'm someone who has experience with this situation myself, and now I have conversations about this daily with my clients, how they are navigating this kind of situation. So what I don't want this episode to be is some like practical guide that if you have been laid off, this is what you should do. That can be definitely useful, and if you want me to record an episode on that, I am happy to do that. But what I believe is even more useful and is not talked so much about is managing that emotionally, recovering your confidence and yourself emotionally from the experience of being laid off. I have to say that even those people who get to stay in the company and are not laid off, being in this kind of situation just inherently affects your confidence and your outlook on your career, because here in Finland, and I think I've spoken about it before, it doesn't work so that you would just come to work and there would be an email that would say you are laid off. There is this kind of a negotiation that precedes it, that in theory means that the employer suggests the intention or the need to reduce the workforce, to do layoffs, and then the employees nominate their representative, and then these representatives of employees and employers meet at one table and they together negotiate for a solution that would be best for everybody, which sounds so wonderful and inclusive. In reality, this is just a formality. So you would have these 3, 4, 5 meetings, and at the end, in 99.9% cases, the employer just goes with the initial suggestion and with the names that they knew from the beginning that would be kicked out of the company. That is the system that we have here, and I do not like the system because it does a lot of damage to the company culture, because during this period when you are negotiating, you are every single day fearing that you will be the one who will get laid off. People are pointing fingers, people are talking behind each other's back who should go and who should stay and why they should stay and someone else should go. Like extremely toxic environment, but it's kind of business as usual, which was just when I was in this situation, it was so weird to me that on Monday the company announced, okay, we're gonna get rid of some of you, or that is our proposal. The decision will be made in 6 weeks, and until then we are just like working like usual, and everybody was supposed to show up at work and do their job best as they could. Like so weird. Honestly, I would have preferred to just get an email that you're out, and I would be out and I would spare myself these wonderful, wonderful 6 weeks. And I remember that we even went for a visit to a company, to one of our biggest clients, in this time when we were doing these negotiations. And it's like the negotiation itself, a lot of dirty laundry is being pulled out on the employer, on the leadership, information about how much dividends were taken out in situations when the company already was struggling financially. And just if you are into drama, then being in this kind of negotiation situation is probably your time to shine. I had some fun hearing about this drama, and I also had a lot of not fun because it was just crazy and absolutely ridiculous, the situation. But the pinnacle of ridiculousness was this company visit. It was our biggest client. The company was hoping that could save our butts from bankruptcy. So, and they selected random people who were supposed to go there. I, to this day, have no clue why I was selected when, like a week later, I was laid off. Like, what value was in me coming to this company for a visit? And they gave us a tour of their lab and of their manufacturing and. These negotiations, unless you are a publicly listed company, it's not a public information. So the client didn't know that the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. And we then went for lunch, and the representatives of the client company, they were saying, recruitment is not going very well, but you are still shining, you're still out there, you are doing really well. And we were all like, doing really well. It was so horrible experience. I now laugh about it because it was just absolutely ridiculous, but it's not very funny, of course. But that is my approach. For me, it's easier to make fun of these situations than being very serious about them. And even in such heavy situations, you can find humor. You can think that something is ridiculous, and maybe that's that's at least my coping mechanism. Well, no, not anymore, because it's been 3 years. Like, I don't care that I was laid off at this point. It's okay, it happened, it's part of my career. It's not something I will put on my business card if I had one, but it's not something I'm gonna be bitter about. I just don't care. But for the purpose of this episode, I will revisit that experience, because I think often better than someone giving you the advice that you might not need, having some stories that you can relate to might be more useful, because it's a big taboo, layoffs. We try to kind of just get to our next job as quickly as possible, and we try to forget what happened, and we don't want that we are necessarily associated with the fact that we got laid off. But I want this episode to be a space where you can acknowledge that, and you can hear from someone who has been through the same situation and managed to get to a point where it doesn't affect my day-to-day, doesn't affect my confidence, doesn't affect my future career outlooks. It's just something that happened to me. It's a thing that is very much outside your control. So it's not a situation you can solve, but you can then solve how big of an impact you let it have on your confidence, on your future prospects. And that's what I want to be talking about in this episode. So I kicked it right off with a story, but if you want in-depth me talking through my experience of getting laid off, you will find that in episode 4, which is the third part of my career story, where I talk what happened there. And I don't want to repeat myself in this episode, but if I remember some story that I maybe did not mention in that episode, I'm gonna share it here. So one thing that I believe is universal is that getting laid off, or being in any kind of situation where a job did not end on your own terms, but a decision you might even make yourself. Maybe it was a job you didn't enjoy anyway and you wanted to leave anyway, but still you were not the one making that decision. It's a bit similar like dating. It's a different situation when you are the one who decides to end a relationship and when that decision is made for you. Even if it wasn't a good relationship, it still feels better to be the one who's in control, who's making the decision. And same goes for career. So there is a lot of shame associated with the fact that you are laid off. For me, I can say it without any emotions. I had a job and I got laid off. It's not my fault. It's not a very unique situation. It's a very common situation. I personally don't feel any shame about it. I don't feel any regret about it, and so I know that that is possible to get into this situation, but it is your task to decide that it's not gonna define you. That you leave the past in the past, and you're not gonna ruminate over if you could have done something different and why it was you specifically. And I'm not gonna lie here and say that the moment I heard that I am getting laid off, that I was above it and I cried. It was extremely uncomfortable moment. I could see that my boss was extremely uncomfortable. He called in the H rep, and she was probably also extremely uncomfortable because she was just typing something there on her laptop during that meeting. And the weird thing is that you never know why specifically you. The reason is that you're getting laid off because the company can't afford to have you on the payroll anymore, but they don't tell you like why me. And I am not stupid. I have my theories why it was me. I was just not very liked in the company, and so I think that it wasn't very difficult to say goodbye to me. But this reason of basically not knowing, that can also do a lot of damage to your confidence. So I think that one very important step is to not fight it. I think that the people who processed their layoff the least are the ones who will try to convince me how okay they are with the fact that they got laid off. And I see the irony that I am here saying it as well, but I am sharing this story not because I would need someone to agree with me, but because nobody talks about this. Nobody sits in front of a microphone and talks to I don't know how many people about their experience of getting laid off because of the shame that is associated with it. So I decided that instead of dwelling in that story, I will process that situation has happened to me, and then I'm going to use it to help other people who are going through the same situation, because I have processed it. I can talk about it here, and I can talk about it not for the reason that someone agrees with me and someone tells me like, yeah, right, that the company was stupid. Anyway, that is not the point. The point is that I am maybe saying out loud here the things that you have gone through, that are going through your mind, and hearing someone else just putting it out there might be actually very healing for other people. So talking this experience through is very powerful, but it's good to be mindful why you are talking this experience through. So do you need to prove a point? Do you need that the other person agrees with you? Do you need to get some closure from the other person? And all of these are in a way valid goals. Getting closure is definitely a super good thing in order to move on. But those are often things that nobody else can give you, and you need to work on yourself. But let's talk through like what that actually is, a layoff. So depending on the country and the legislation of that country, in Finland you cannot just kick out an employee unless there is a very serious reason for it. And even if there is a very serious reason, you need to first give them a warning, you need to help them to improve the situation, you need to document everything, and after a very long time, if things don't improve, then you can kick them out. But there is, of course, a situation when a company is doing financially so horribly that if it kept on the payroll all the people that are there currently, the whole company would go bankrupt and everybody would lose their job, which is not great for the economy, and it's not great for the government to suddenly have a lot of unemployed people to pay support to. So they allow this kind of situation that the company can let go portion of the employees and kind of try to save their butt by doing that. And for many companies, like, the salary cost is the main expense. I worked for a recruitment agency. Like, what expenses did they have? If you looked at the financials, the salaries were the biggest chunk. So also at that moment, the company had almost no clients, and recruitment agency that has nobody wanting to recruit is very difficult to secure any money getting in. So then it doesn't even make sense to keep people that don't have anything to work on. So it's a very economically logical solution. But what I don't like is that often it is discussed, like layoffs, that it is something that is absolutely inevitable because of the situation in the wider environment, that because of the economy not doing well, we need to do layoffs. And that's skipping an important step, that the company has tools and can make decisions and can save the situations and can kick their butts and try to get more clients or try to offer different services. It's not like a company is completely powerless. And I am saying that now, being an entrepreneur, and I don't have any employees, so I do not have that responsibility and that commitment to other people to take care of their livelihood. And I started my business in a year when the economy in Finland really wasn't doing well, and it basically hasn't been doing well since. I haven't had a time in my business when economy would be booming, but that doesn't mean that I am destined to fail and destined to not do well. I just had to adjust the way I run my business so that my business survives. And that is something that not all companies are able to do. And those who fail to adjust to the new situation then go to this, in a way, easy and lazy solution of doing layoffs. So what I often hear is that people feel like getting laid off is their personal failure, but it is a failure of the company, of the leadership, of the management, of not making the right decisions in difficult economic times, not accounting in advance for possibly bad economic times, not having enough buffer, not using good times to invest in things that would actually grow the business, but instead eating through that money. And unless you were some C-level that got laid off and some of the decisions you made maybe led to the situation, but most people who get laid off are at the very, let's say, bottom of the food chain. You could not change the situation. You were not led to make these decisions. You were told to sit and wait and maybe do some very desperate tasks, like a typically company will start asking all the employees to do sales and get clients, and that just never works, because if you aren't trained in actually how to do sales, if you don't have a good network of potential clients, then that is a complete waste of everyone's time. But you cannot blame yourself for a situation that you could not control in any way. Really, in most cases, there is absolutely nothing you personally could have done to avoid the situation in which the company is doing layoffs. And it is crazy how I often see that the people affected are assigning so much responsibility and blame to themselves, and the company representatives that got the company to this situation and made the decision don't feel this sense of responsibility and blame. And of course, maybe it's even more comfortable to pass that blame onto external circumstances, the economy, the job market, the employees, like everybody else but ourselves. And I know that there are like two different sides. That on one hand, yes, you can't control the fact that there were layoffs in the first place, but people feel like they could control that they would not get laid off, or that if they were better employees, they would not get laid off. But that is a very, in a way, dangerous theory, because you can always do more. Rarely in the business world are we in a situation where you can say, I absolutely could not have done anything more. But I think the thing is, it wasn't your job to do more, and you could have gotten yourself to a burnout, and maybe this would still be the outcome. And I wouldn't even blame myself that when the company announces that it's doing layoffs, some people really start pushing hard, and that feel that now they need to really prove themselves and work hard. But some people start feeling very stressed, very nervous. They start to feel like doing hard work is pointless, and that is completely understandable. And if that was your situation, if you feel like in the weeks, months leading towards the layoff, you just weren't the top employee, there is nothing to, like, that is from a human perspective completely understandable, because who wants to exert themselves in a job that might not exist in a few months? And unless you are lucky and you have another job lined up, you are facing the very real possibility of having to go out into the job market. That is not a very happy place to be, and you need to work really, really hard to actually secure your next job. So it's normal that you want to preemptively save energy so that you then have enough of it to actually secure your next job, secure your livelihood. So whatever was your response to when layoffs were announced, on when they were happening, whether it was sadness, whether it was rage, whether it was complete loss of motivation, or whether it was starting to push hard, all are, given circumstances, completely understandable reactions. And then, okay, you see it from a later perspective, that now you know the results, so you feel like you could have done something better, but always think that you did the best you could with the resources you had and with the information you had back then. And in this situation, we can be often very kind to our friends and family when they are going through it, and we can comfort them very well. But when it comes to ourselves, we can be so harsh and so mean to ourselves, and you should be the one who is the kindest to yourself. Sometimes when you have these thoughts like giving hard time to yourself, would you talk like that to your spouse? Would you talk like that to your friends, to your family? Most probably not. So why do you let yourself give this negative talk to you? It's really not the time and place. And overall, thinking how things could have been different and what would have been, you don't probably need me to tell you that that is a complete waste of time. And the best you can do is not to try to come up with some ultimate truth of what was right in the situation and who was in the right and who wasn't, but to just decide to put an end to it. That you cannot enter a time machine and go back and do something differently. But what you can do right now is to close that door and decide that it will affect you no further. And I talk to clients who have been laid off years and years ago, and they still are not in a place where they feel like that past is fully processed. And I usually allow a lot of time in the session where we talk it through. I'm not a therapist, and sometimes this can even be a topic worth bringing to a therapy. If it's something that has been defining your confidence for years, then maybe it does require some kind of intervention. People often think that for therapy you have had to go through some absolute trauma, but no therapist would ever think that some problem is small enough to work on. And it takes a lot of courage to admit to yourself that maybe the past is still weighing you down, but you are making an active decision to do something about it and to just close the door, get closure, let go. That's the most important thing. I often see advice that when you are laid off, like this is how you extract value from the experience, and this is what you should do. You need to get back out there and find the next job, and maybe there are certain ways how you can like stay in touch with your existing company or things you can do. But above all that, I think the most important thing you need to do is to get closure and let go. And by that I don't mean burn some bridges and get to a place where you feel like superior to everything that happened, but I mean to allow your future not be defined by the layoff. I worked as a recruiter and I have interviewed people who got laid off, and I can really tell you that I did not think anything of it. I didn't even specifically ask about this, that how did your last job end? I think that's such a stupid question when recruiters ask in an interview. What's that gonna tell me that how somebody's job ended? But sometimes people would bring it up themselves, that they said, I worked in this job, then I got laid off, and then I got that job. And I'm like, well, okay, fine. Really, that does not define in any way your competence, your capabilities, your experience. I care about the things you did and not what kind of situation was the company for which you worked. But often bringing this up, I don't necessarily think it's a good idea. If you have fully processed it and it's just part of your career story and you want to share it. But sometimes people try to convince me how super okay they are with it, or they would over explain why that company did layoffs. And again, really, as a recruiter, nobody cares about that, what the company did. They care about what you do, and an interview is not maybe the best place to bring up this kind of topic and try to get some validation from the people interviewing you. And as I mentioned, I use my story, my situation, as a bit of a fuel or as a bit of a tool to build my business around. Not that it's built on the fact that I got laid off, but I believe that makes me a really good career coach for certain type of people. And I'm the same when I hire my coaches or mentors. I would rather work with someone who has actually gone through negative experiences and process them and figure them out, because it's not very inspiring for me when someone is like, well, I was super successful, I got my jobs like this and everything worked out super well, never got laid off, never faced any kind of negative situation. Like, what can that person teach me? How can that person help me when they just happen to be extremely lucky? Of course, it's a very nice success story and cheering for them, but as in terms of their suitability to me, someone who has faced a lot of setbacks in their career, would not be the most useful. And those are very powerful moments in my sessions with clients when they are kind of tiptoeing around that topic, that what happened in the company like just prior to the layoff or during the layoff, and I most probably know what they're talking about, so I just say it in a very plain language and I can see the relief that finally someone is actually talking about them. Because what I see very often is that in a company it can be such a ridiculous situation, you feel like, what is happening here, that you almost feel like something is wrong with you that you are in this situation, which when I say it, it sounds crazy, but I know many people will be able to relate to this, because we think that businesses are these like rational entities who know what they're doing and who are making business decisions and keeping eye on their financials, and that is definitely true for some, but it's not the universal truth of all businesses out there. So, and being in this absolutely ridiculous situation where you're sitting there and you see people arguing with each other, that you almost like disassociate. You are like, what is happening here? And we can like take this very strange experience and lock it somewhere deep inside us, and it's still there. It still defines us, and we need to just bring it out and talk it through, and ideally have someone else say, yeah, that is normal, that's happened to me as well. So I think that's what makes my career coaching super valuable, that it's not just, okay, let's look at your CV, let's look at your LinkedIn profile, let's prepare you for interviews, but we start by going through the dirt, by bringing up everything that has happened, not just so that we can spill the tea on each other's company, not so that like let's talk drama, but let's talk about every experience that you feel like is defining your confidence. Because everything in a job search, everything is super connected. If your CV is not very strong, then yeah, maybe it's because your CV writing skills are not very good, but I have a trained eye to see that usually your CV is not very strong. You are not communicating your experience very confidently because you are not very confident about your experience. Why are you not very confident about your experience? Because you have had possibly these negative experiences that have shaped what you believe about yourself, how you see your experience. And if you have been several times through a layoff, that can do a damage to your confidence. It doesn't do damage to your background. Your background can and most probably is still perfectly fine, but the way you think about it makes it almost broken. And that's why it's so important to talk this through, because it makes it very difficult to secure interviews in the first place if you are not communicating about your background in your applications with 100% confidence. And then even if it finally works out and you show up to the interview, but you show up with a lot of shame and a lot of negative feelings about your own past, it will inherently like show in the interview. They will feel it somehow. I could always feel it when someone was almost trying to talk me out of proceeding in the interview with them and telling me all the things they don't have experience with, and telling me that actually they didn't really work on this or that thing. And then if you are trying to convince me that you don't have the skills, well, then I'm not going to proceed with you in the interview. It was as simple as that. So having that layoff, that thing define you is optional. There are ways to process it, to acknowledge it. You will never be able to erase it. If you were laid off, it's forever part of your CV. But it is in your control to decide how big of a showtime and how big of an effect you let that have on you. And it's of course really, really sad how much layoffs are happening now in many countries. But I think it has one little positive aspect, and that is normalizing layoffs. When I was a kid and I heard of some person getting laid off, it was like crazy story that everybody was talking about. But now I feel like most of us have gotten laid off, or I would say like if you have worked for like 10 plus years and you were never in a situation where the company you worked for was doing layoffs, like you have a very unique career path at this point, because it has defined everyone. And even people who have not been laid off, it's still kind of shaping their fear of going out to the job market. They are staying with jobs that they hate, because they are worried that it's very unsafe out there and that changing jobs would be super risky. So it scares me a little bit how long time it will take for us collectively to recover from this wave of layoffs. But if I have to find one positive thing, it is the fact that now saying that you got laid off, nobody's really even gonna blink, because it is just so common. So I think there definitely has been much more normalizing of a layoff. Which doesn't mean that you should now build your whole LinkedIn profile around the fact that you were laid off. It is nothing to hide, but it doesn't communicate any kind of value about what kind of professional you are and what you are capable of. And as I mentioned, therapy can be a very valid option in this situation, but if you feel like it's not as deep, but still the fact that you were laid off, it's just defining you in sneaky, subtle ways, you feel like you cannot show up with full confidence to your job search, then definitely let me know and we can talk it through. I have started almost as a default incorporating some kind of debrief on your past, and starting fresh, starting from a clean slate. I can help you by sharing some relatable stories of myself, of my past clients, of just like normalizing your experience. It can be super, super valuable. So if you fill out the form that I leave in the show notes, you can let me know a little bit about your situation. You can be as honest as you want, but only share the information that you feel, of course, safe sharing. And I will invite you to a free intro session where we can go a bit more in depth. And in the free intro session, you can decide if you want to work with me as your coach. And career coaching, the way I see it, it's really not just about let's check your CV, but it's about talking, where have you been, what has happened to you, what has defined the professional you are and you feel like you are today, what you actually want to do, what's the future step, and we can then make that future decision unaffected by the damage, layoffs, and all that kind of stuff has done to your outlook on the future. If you, since being laid off, if you are kind of struggling to actually decide what would be the next best step, then maybe your outlook to the future, what possibilities you even see realistic for yourself might be clouded by this negative experience of getting laid off, worrying it will happen again, worrying how you're perceived in the job market because of this. And those are all things we can talk through. So maybe that's something that's been on your mind for weeks, months, years, and we can get it processed and over in a few sessions and build back excitement about your career. Because even if this experience happened to you, there is still so much cool things that are waiting for you out there, and you can decide to leave the past in the past. And one of the ways to do that is to reach out to me, schedule a free intro, and maybe this is how you will finally be able to let go, and you have nothing to lose. I invite you to the free intro session. You can tell me what happened. I can tell you how we could approach that. If it doesn't sound like something you want, then you will definitely leave with more clarity, and you had one more person listening to your story without any judgment. So this was a bit of a different episode. It wasn't so much about giving you some practical advice, but just very much about giving you a different perspective of this so common phenomenon of getting laid off. And once you process that experience, and once you not let it define you any longer, then there are lots of practical steps you should do to get back to the job market. But if you try to skip this important step of letting go, of getting closure, of closing the door on the past, it's gonna keep coming up in your future. It's gonna keep showing up until you just decide that this is enough. And I want to present you the opportunity that we can make that decision together, and then make a plan on how to actually move forward towards a more exciting future. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, you were able to relate. Feel free to just send me a message if it resonated with you. Send me a message about your situation. These podcasts, I love recording them, but they're very much one-way street. I can't see you. I don't know what's your story. So if you just want to send me a message to tell me that this resonated and maybe a little bit about your story, I would really appreciate that. And that's all I have for you today, and I will talk to you on the next episode.